and corner apartment 102. Alex Stoip can sing the praises.
I love the design, the amazing view.
Now the surprise. Alex pays just $1,200 a month in rent for a room that doesn't hold a lot of stuff. That's the twist.
Awesome.
What's that?
The bed, actually.
Directly above, and not exactly easy access, we might add. Talk about high rents in San Francisco. Alex Stoip lives in a 10 by 4.5 foot closet.
That was my bedroom for many years.
That's roommate Tristan Harvey, who grew up here. His father, Larry Harvey, founded Burning Man. Tristan recently enlarged the closet's living area by adding plywood. He's HIV positive.
I built that out to expand that space because this room could stand to lose a little bit, and I needed the money.
Did you envision yourself at 33 living in a closet?
I don't like to call it that.
What do you call it?
A second living area.
Beyond the semantics of it, what we have here is a case of outside appearances sometimes being deceiving. It is old news to Sam Moss, a devoted advocate for public housing and a critic of San Francisco's status quo.
Saying the housing situation is a crisis has become a cliche at this point. It is beyond crisis.
More like a self-imposed crisis, says Sam, due to the city's zoning restrictions against high-density housing. And now Tristan is a victim of that. As he said, he rents the closet to Alex because he needs the money. Why? His father died last April and never transferred the lease. Do you see where this is going? An apartment that had been $1,600 a month for 40 years with rent control suddenly became $3,600. And Tristan found out the day of his dad's memorial.
I believe it's the landowners, most of them, who charge as much as they can and squeeze every penny out of everything that can be squeezed.
I mean, he had the legal right to do it. Was it morally right to do it? Probably not.
Meantime, Tristan has appealed to the city. It's a matter of principle, he says.
I'm struggling just to keep my head above water, and I think a lot of San Francisco can share that sentiment. There are more than you might imagine that hold steady jobs and live in their cars because they cannot afford to live any other way.
So compared with that, maybe a closet featuring an elevated bed in a loft looks pretty good.
It is really cozy up here.
And with $1 million view outside a tiny window. Do we dare call this the new normal?
What is the solution?
More housing.
How?
Building it, like actually just building it.
So if Alex Stoip dared to dream, what would it be?
To make enough money to live in a home where I can have a dog and have a backyard for my kids to play in.
You think that will ever happen here in San Francisco?
Never.
Near Alamo Square in San Francisco, Wayne Friedman, ABC 7 News.
ABC News, straightforward.
Okay, so when the New York Times calls you one of the 8 news podcasts worth listening to, well, you just say thank you. So go on, start smart with Start Here, the ABC News Daily Podcast. Take us with you. Listen to us now, free on Apple Podcasts.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now, imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
It is so good.
Look at this.
It has everything right there.
Oh, the wellness section. I'm just like, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I love the deals and stew. Getting these easy recipes has been super sweet.
I love it, and they love it. Can I get an amen? The new GoodMorningAmerica.com. It's with me all day.
Almost every home here has sustained damage.
The roof was like 3 houses down, and the roof's, I think it's right there.
I'm glad you're okay.
Oh, thank you.
You could hear the gunfire just around this wall. So this is one of those checks. Around the corner here are the children. What's your name? Back on the job.
Back in the job.
Help build my country back. How are you? How you doing? Good to see you.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
It'd be hard to visit Cherry Circle in Gloucester Township without getting to know Lamar Harris.
You're doing pretty good, buddy.
He's around every corner, helping neighbors with everyday chores like picking up trash.
Walk a lot of dogs too, right?
Yeah.
A lot of pets?
Yeah.
But the past few years haven't been easy for Lamar, who has disabilities. He lives alone in the same house he grew up in after losing his whole family. Where'd you learn to do all this stuff?
Did it before for my dad.
Now he's at risk of losing the rest of his world, too. Lamar learned from this legal complaint that he has so much debt, his house is at risk of going into foreclosure.
I've been looking after him for so many years now. It's like part of my family. And I just can't stand by and let anything happen to him.
So the neighbors found a way to give back to Lamar, raising $50,000 to help him pay off his taxes and keep his house. Now that Lamar and his neighbors have raised the money, they're going to have to come here to the municipal building to pay back all the taxes he owes. But he's not out of trouble yet because another quarter of taxes are due this month.
See, the problem is today, $2,000 is due for taxes.
Right.
A problem until our Action News Cam found another friend.
Got $3,000 for you, Lamar.
Say what?
Got $3,000 for you right now for your
Who
donation.
wanted to show up and help out
For the
too.
last 16 years, man, you've done nothing but help everybody in this neighborhood. You've never asked for nothing in return. We love you.
In Gloucester Township.
Really.
Becca Hendrickson, Channel 6, Action News.
Breaking news, guys. There is a troubling headline this morning about guacamole. Avocados in short supply, prices are soaring. Some restaurants, they're using alternative ingredients. Oh. Come on, Kaylee Hartung is in LA with this. What? Why are they messing with our guacamole?
Hey, good morning, Cecilia. I know it feels wrong, but it has been a ripe choice for some restaurants. As the prices of avocados soar and demand stays high, some kitchens are getting creative.
It's the so-called salsa scandal that has guacamole fans outraged. Guacamole, that yummy, oh-so-popular Mexican superfood, has become a staple on menus across the country. At some establishments here in LA, that dip has turned out to be a dupe. In California, high temperatures prompting a surprisingly low supply of avocados, making the fruit overwhelmingly expensive. The price of avocado doubling in cost since last year at nearly $66 a case.
And in previous years, I mean, they've gone up to 110 around this time, $110 per case, and we would have to say sometimes that we don't have it.
The troubling cost leaving some chefs to take another route, using calabacita, or Mexican squash, a vegetable mimicking the texture of avocado, but also a cheaper alternative to making everyone's favorite appetizer.
You make this fake one using a summer squash that looks almost like a zucchini, and I've had some people say that it also works with the zucchini. And you blend them and you get it to that texture that is a taqueria guacamole. It's pretty eerily similar in texture.
But the pit of the problem might not be the price tag. For restaurants like this one, the authentic taste of guacamole is priceless.
I've experimented with it amongst our employees, and it's not going to happen. We can't do it. If we don't like the taste, we're not going to give anything to the customers.
So not surprisingly, there's been mixed reaction to this vegetable substitute. If you're trying to spot mock guac, look for thinner, more watery consistency. But the good news here is, guys, that prices are expected to come back down to normal this fall. That means I will not have to put squash on my toast.
Yeah,
thank goodness.
That's just not okay. Okay, Kaylee, thank you.
America Strong, fasten your belts, put up your tray tables. Someone very special clearing you for takeoff. Chantel Shawnee Poozer has always dreamed of being a flight attendant. Here she is at the airport getting a hug, face to face with this American Airlines worker. And here she is with the flight crew, her mother with the pilot right behind her. Shawnee already knew so many at the airline because this was the flight she had taken so often for medical treatment. She has Down syndrome and a respiratory disease, and a surprise was coming. This was the moment her dream came true. They named her honorary flight attendant.
Thank you for your attention. Enjoy your flight.
It was Shawnee helping everyone prepare for that flight, the airline documenting the moment, and When it came time to serve the snacks, Shawnee's smile even better than what she was serving.
Her smile will just light up the room. She has so much joy.
And listen to the captain talking about Shawnee as one of his 3 flight attendants.
You got 3 of my finest flight attendants ever on board the aircraft. Thank you all very much for joining us today on this special day. Welcome aboard.
She left that flight with that smile. And tonight, her family says it has powered her through surgery at the Cincinnati Children's Hospital. She is recovering tonight.
There you go, girl.
And her mother is grateful for that surprise on board that flight.
It's important to celebrate her now. She needs to see the love and support that she has.
From that American Airlines crew, from the passengers, and from her family, who wanted to make sure one day Shawnee got her wings. We are pulling for you, Shawnee. Many flights ahead, I'm sure.
Did you resist any of it? Because you're very, very frank about everything that went on in that. Alienating basically every musician you worked with? That happened?
If I was gonna resist it, I would have resisted it in front. When I told AJ and Cameron, I'm committed to this.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, in my heart, I committed myself to being completely honest and drawing no lines anywhere.
But taking him to Laurel Canyon, he didn't want to go.
No, I didn't want to go.
And he's like,
Stupid.
oh, please, come on.
I still think it was
You're not
stupid.
going to do that, are you?
It wound up really well.
Meanwhile, everybody's talking about Laurel Canyon. And, we had to go to Laurel Canyon. He's like, oh, you're not going to make me stand on the steps of the country store.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah,
come
nothing
on.
happened there.
Glenn Fry
This is
saw
so
you standing
corny.
there and started the Eagles. My God, you have to do it. Oh, please. And this is what we put in the film when he, those moments where he says things like, there's no cinematic value in this whatsoever. And he turns his back on the camera. It's like, then we get him to go in the Laurel Canyon Country Store, which is really the citadel of that whole period as it exists now. See, this is what you get.
He just mocks it.
He mocks
Yes,
it.
yeah.
So he walks in, and and he's looking like kind of poetic, and I go, Cross, what did this place represent to you? And he goes, you should see it. It's in the movie. He goes, what did it represent? It's the place where we came to get the groceries. Jesus. And he walks off the camera.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
We're back with an all-new season of What Would You Do? And Friday on the summer premiere, nothing's more personal for Dancing with the Stars and top model winner Niall DeMarco than this.
Would you like to go in and play the actor yourself?
Yeah. Huh? What are you saying to me right now?
Stop. He can't hear you.
I'm not playing charades with you. What else do you want?
Get somebody else to serve him.
This is taking up way too much time. Just go somewhere else where they understand you.
You don't treat people that way.
It was my son. I kicked you in your...
And what happens next?
This young man is Niall. He's interpreting for Niall.
I absolutely love everything about your attitude today and your approach. I mean, my faith in humanity has been completely restored.
If it's jaw-dropping,
It's What Would You Do?
Friday on the...
Kimberly Brooks, and you're watching ABC News Live. And I want to tell you about this incredible experience I had attending this legendary exclusive all-white party. It's called Dinner en Blanc. It's French-inspired. It's a pop-up dinner that has become a global phenomenon. So this year alone, 130,000 people will participate in 80 cities across 30 countries. The dinner happens in these iconic public spaces, but the location is secret. It's not revealed until the night of. So take a look at my VIP experience getting to this beautiful event, and then see what happened after. ABC News Live got an exclusive with the other VIP guests, and we're here at the Sofitel Hotel for a wine tasting with the wine partner Chateau Ste. Michelle. Chateau Ste. Michelle is the official wine partner of Dinner en Blanc and have been in business for more than 50 years. Based out of Washington, head white winemaker David Rosenthal gave us an exclusive wine blending experience, combining the unique taste of their different Rieslings to make the perfect glass. But that was only a taste of what we had in store. What I'm about to do right now is completely epic. I'm going to this super exclusive all-white party that only happens once a year. And the thing is, I'm all dressed up, but I don't even know where I'm going because the location is not disclosed until the party begins. So this bus back here is with all of these VIP guests. You want to tag along? Let's go. The ride takes us through rush hour traffic in New York City towards our secret location. Okay, we just saw an entire group of people dressed in white with their tables and their friends, but still don't really know where we're going. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. We finally arrive at Rockefeller Park to have dinner with over 5,000 of our closest friends. You're videoing me, I'm videoing myself!
It's my 5th year of Dinner en Blanc.
Like, is this your first time? It is. It's all of your first time?
It's our first time. Yeah.
We're together.
It's my 3rd year.
Your 3rd year. So you're like a veteran here.
Yeah. There you go.
As VIPs, our host, Sofitel, hooked us up with a beautiful table and some amazing food.
We have some pate, some smoked duck, some saucisson sec, some lobster tail, and octopus carpaccio.
Casual.
Yes. Casual, you know.
Casual.
But very French and, of course, very Sofitel.
Yes. Most of the guests are invited by a group leader who organizes dinner, decor, and displays for their crew. This group went all out with a winter wonderland theme. Amazing. Did you guys have like a vision for what you wanted it to be?
Yeah, so our theme is Winter Wonderland.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have like a whole lot of stuff. Like we have a train set, we got like the whole thing. It's a little, we're getting it together.
Now that everyone is ready to go, the dinner officially begins with the waving of the napkins. And then it's time to kick back and enjoy some music and entertainment. This is amazing. Right now, there's Broadway stars performing just literally like 2 feet away, just belting their lungs out. It's incredible. A truly magical evening that was about to take a turn. The evening's been amazing, but it might actually be the end because you see me holding an umbrella. It started thunderstorming, so it might be finishing early, but I think the night was a success anyway, and most importantly, I kept my dress clean. The heavens opened up and we ran for it. Oh my God, crazy! Our interview unfortunately got cut short with Sandy Safi, the co-founder of New York's event, when the lightning began. Sandy, I didn't expect that we were going to have the interview like this. Clearly we're at the end of the celebration, but you say rain or shine, right? People came out, they had a good time for how long it lasted.
They came prepared. Everybody had their umbrellas and everybody was ready for a bit of rain. But unfortunately, there's lightning right near our venue within a half-mile range apparently. So for security measures, from my understanding, the city is asking us to shut.
Yeah, the wind is getting pretty strong, but this was my first time here. I have to say you guys did an incredible job. Everyone's prepared with their umbrellas.
They are prepared.
Yeah, so
those umbrellas popped out, but it's the lightning.
Yeah, and I see it right now. So thank you for an incredible evening. It was great. You guys did a good job. I hope you're still proud of yourselves. It was incredible.
Well, I just want to make sure that everybody gets out of here safely.
Yes.
But that didn't stop the dinner guests from moving their party from the park to the streets. An evening surely none of us will ever forget. Kimberly Brooks for ABC News Live in New York.
ABC News, straightforward.
Okay, so when the New York Times calls you one of the 8 news podcasts worth listening to, well, you just say thank you. So go on, start smart with Start Here, the ABC News Daily Podcast. Take us with you. Listen to us now, free on Apple Podcasts.
Almost every home here has sustained damage.
The roof was like 3 houses down, and the roof's, I think it's right there.
We're glad you're okay.
Oh, thank you.
You could hear the gunfire just around this wall. So this is one of those checks. Around the corner here are the children. What's your name? Back on the job.
Back in the job.
Help build my country back. How are you? How you doing? Good to see you.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
Okay, imagine the morning. I'm talking about a good morning. Imagine starting your day off with friends. What's better than that? You know, like the crazy smart friend who always keeps you in the know. The friend with the huge heart and smile who just makes everything better. Imagine hearing from people who open your eyes and your heart. Imagine knowing what's coming next in the day ahead. Well, I get to live this each morning together with you. Imagine that. How blessed am I? And that's what makes it such a good morning, America.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.
Good evening. The strike began as scheduled at 7 o'clock local time this morning. Its impact was immediate. Most flights delayed, many more canceled. But there was no delay in the reaction of the federal government, led by the president himself. We have a series of reports tonight. First, here is White House correspondent Sam Donaldson.
4 hours after the strike began, President Reagan, described by aides as very angry and very determined, served notice on the air traffic controllers that they had better return to work quickly or else.
Government cannot close down the assembly line. It has to provide without interruption the protective services which are government's reason for being. It was in recognition of this that the Congress passed a law forbidding strikes by government employees against the public safety. It is for this reason that I must tell those who fail to report for duty this morning they are in violation of the law, and if they do not report for work within 48 hours, they have forfeited their jobs and will be terminated.
Strong as the threat of firing may be, the administration moved rapidly to employ other weapons as well. Court proceedings to force the strikers back to work were begun in 19 separate courts. Criminal charges were being prepared against individuals. The first cases would be brought against union leaders, but FBI agents are compiling a complete list of strikers. The union's $3.5 million strike fund has been impounded by court order, and a petition has been filed asking for decertification of the union, meaning to put it out of business permanently. The president was asked why such strong action immediately. Why not some lesser action to begin with?
What lesser action can there be? The law is very explicit. They are violating the law.
The president is said by an aide to be tough as nails in his determination to break this strike. And this morning, Mr. Reagan reminisced in the Oval Office about Calvin Coolidge's similar determination and success in breaking the Boston police strike of 1919 when Coolidge was governor of Massachusetts. In this case, Mr. Reagan wanted to make the deadline for firing 24 hours at first, but finally settled in 48 in order to make certain that no air traffic controller could say later he didn't get the word. The president seems convinced that by being tough, he can force many of the union members back to work. He also seems convinced that being tough is what the public wants. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, the White House.
This is Bettina Gregory. So far, it's a standoff. President Poli of the Air Traffic Controllers Union versus the President of the United States.
In good conscience, I will not order my members to go back to work.
You are prepared to defy the President's request that your members go back to work.
The controllers out there firmly believe in what they are doing, and we will continue the strike.
The first nationwide walkout was called when labor negotiations broke down early this morning. And so instead of the day shifts showing up, pickets turned out at airports all over the country. Figures vary, but between 70 and 80% of the nation's air traffic controllers are out on strike, blatantly defying a law barring federal employees from walking off their jobs. The minority, like this controller at Washington's National Airport, are equally adamant about not breaking the law.
I'm unable to go home and tell my children to obey the law if I don't. Excuse me, I got to go to work.
The people you see crossing the picket line at New York's control center are supervisors, some of the 2,500 supervisory personnel now manning the system. 700 military controllers are standing by to help out. The FAA says despite the strike, half the scheduled flights are taking off.
Both the Air Transport Association and within the last hour, even the Airline Pilots Association has called us and told us things are going great.
But there are cancellations and delays of up to 6 hours, and the government is exerting every possible pressure to get the strikers back to work. In Washington, Justice Department lawyers rushed into court at 4 a.m. to get a court order barring the strike. In New York, the airlines went into court demanding $50,000 an hour damages from the union. Proceedings are being started to decertify the union, that is, declare it's no longer a legal bargaining unit. And in 21 cities, U.S. attorneys are starting actions against controllers who strike. This could mean jail or fines or both. On top of that, the government is threatening to fire each and every striker.
If we're all fired, I want to know who's going to work the airplanes.
Despite his bravado, Poli came out of federal court after hearing lawyers' argument for 2 hours that he is in blatant contempt of the restraining order. The government is asking for $1 million a day in fines and jail for Poli and other union leaders. Judge will render his decision after a dinner recess, but Poli is still holding out against incredible odds and betting against the full weight of the law and the full anger of the Reagan administration that he can still tough it out. Bettina Gregory, ABC News, Washington.
Good evening. Even after leaving office, presidents of the United States hold a special status, allowing them to fulfill roles no one else can. And so it was today. Former President Bill Clinton secretly flew to North Korea, a nation with which the U.S. has no diplomatic relations, to win freedom for two American journalists. Laura Ling and Yuna Lee were sentenced to 12 years hard labor for crossing North Korea's border illegally. After he met with North Korea's Kim Jong-il, the women were pardoned. Our senior foreign affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, is in Washington. Martha.
Charlie, the North Koreans are reporting that Bill Clinton has now left North Korea. It is unclear whether the journalists are on his plane. President Clinton held an emotional meeting with the two journalists shortly before the special pardon was issued by the North Koreans. Despite a few tense moments in the negotiations today, Bill Clinton seems to have gotten exactly what he wanted, freedom for the two journalists, but the North Koreans got what they wanted as well.
Less than 24 hours after former President Clinton landed in North Korea, he secured the release of the journalists. But he had been assured before he got there that's what would happen.
This is a big coup to have a former president on their soil requesting the release of the journalists.
And they were making the most of it. Pictures of a grinning Kim Jong-il side by side with President Clinton, meetings with Mr. Clinton, and a VIP state dinner. But the White House insisted today this was not an official visit.
This was a
private mission.
It was former Vice President Al Gore who sought Mr. Clinton's help. Gore is the co-founder of Current TV, where Laura Ling and Yoona Lee worked when they were detained by North Korea last March. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has also been heavily involved in trying to secure the young women's release, including issuing an apology to the North Koreans during an interview with me just 2 weeks ago.
The young women themselves have apparently admitted that they probably did trespass, so they are deeply regretful, and we are very sorry this happened.
Since President Obama took office, the North Koreans have tested a nuclear weapon, a long-range missile, and a flurry of short and medium-range rockets. Critics say the Clinton visit is rewarding bad behavior.
Their behavior has been absolutely atrocious, and then we've made this tremendous concession. I think by sending a person of this profile, this high stature, to North Korea could turn out to be a mistake.
For the families of Laura Ling and Yoona Lee, it is a day of joy. In a statement, they said, "We are counting the seconds to hold Laura and Yoona in our arms."
Of course, once the journalists are safely home, all eyes will be back on North Korea to see if the Clinton visit does anything to get them back to the talks on the nuclear issue. Charlie?
Which is an interesting question. Martha Raddatz reporting from Washington. Thanks. And we'll take that question to our chief Washington correspondent, George Stephanopoulos. But, George, let's start with the mission itself. Private mission, they said. But obviously the White House, the State Department knew all about this. How did it come about?
Weeks of conversations with the State Department and the National Security Council, as Martha reported, but former Vice President Al Gore, who was thought to be the envoy, the administration's #1 choice, but the North Koreans made it clear they wanted a former president. They wanted Clinton. The former president was in conversations with the White House over the weekend, flew out, and is probably on his way home right away, right this second.
There are so many issues, though, between the U.S. and North Korea. And he met with Kim Jong-il. So is the expectation he got into those issues, or just talking about the two journalists?
Well, the North Korean state media said that the former president told Kim Jong-il, gave a message from President Obama. The White House insists that is not the case. Moreover, they say that the former president was under strict instructions not to go beyond this brief at all, to talk only about the journalists, because of course, North Korea has been looking for ways to get around these six-party talks. President Obama doesn't want to let them.
It's interesting if this causes a precedent. The Iranians are holding 3 Americans who may have crossed their borders, and you wonder if this wouldn't cause other nations not friendly with us to grab Americans.
That is why, as happy as everyone will be to have the journalists home, the White House is quite anxious about this. They're concerned that Iran will look at this and say, we know exactly what to do with those hitchhikers we found in the Kurdish mountains. We'll detain them. We'll demand an envoy. We'll try to find a different way to start negotiations.
All right, George Stephanopoulos reporting tonight. Thanks.
Good evening. There is a plane crash in the news, a deadly one. Korean Air Flight 801 with 254 people aboard smashed into a hillside in Guam, a U.S. territory in the South Pacific. There are at least 29 survivors, and here's what else we know. The flight originated in the South Korean capital, Seoul. Some Americans were on board. The plane was just 3 miles from its landing site, Guam International Airport, when it went down in the middle of a rainy night. We begin with ABC's Lisa Stark.
Hours after the crash, at first light, the wreckage was still smoldering. The 747 had plowed into a jungle less than 2 miles from a nearby naval facility. The only thing recognizable was the tail. The U.S. military mounted a rescue operation.
Our people are up there trying to bring stretchers in and cots in, and we're also trying to bring stretchers and cots in by helo because of the inaccessibility.
The injured were taken to Naval Hospital Guam, about 5 miles from the crash site. Guam's governor did make his way to the accident scene and talked with one survivor.
Thought that there was no emergency or anything like that. He thought he was just coming in for a landing, and all of a sudden he was engulfed in flames, and he crawled out of there.
The Korean Air 747 had been cleared for landing and was 3 miles from the runway at the Guam airport when it disappeared from radar screens. There was no indication of any emergency. It was the middle of the night and weather was poor.
The weather at the time was heavy rain, light winds, visibility 1 mile.
Because of the poor weather, the pilot was landing using his instruments, but one part of the airport's instrument landing system was not working.
The airport officials reported that the glide slope for the airport had been reported by a notice to airmen, a NOTAM, as out of service.
The glide slope indicator helps pilots keep the plane at the correct altitude as they make their landing. The jumbo jet was 13 years old, delivered to Korean Air in 1984, and had flown nearly 50,000 hours, not excessive by industry standards, and had made over 8,400 takeoffs and landings. Most of the passengers were Korean tourists, many reported to be on their honeymoon.
Now, investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board and the Federal Aviation Administration will be leaving this evening from Andrews Air Force Base, heading to Guam. They expect to arrive tomorrow. One of the first things they will do, as in any airplane crash of this sort, is to look for the plane's black boxes, the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, in the hopes that they can provide some clues. Diane?
Our thanks to Lisa Stark. We're joined now by John Nance, an airline pilot and ABC News aviation consultant. John, Lisa Stark mentioned that part of the instrument landing system at Guam's airport, the glide slope, wasn't working.
Yes.
What did that mean for that pilot?
It just meant a more difficult approach. Certainly it's one that we routinely do all the time all over the world. It's called a non-precision approach. You still have the guidance left and right going to the end of the runway, but you have to make your own altitude decisions based on where you are. In other words, you have to determine precisely where you are along the approach and then step down in altitude rather than coming down smoothly as with an ILS.
And would it have been complicated even more by the rain?
There's no question about it. When you put nighttime and then rain into the equation, you get a little bit more complicated situation. Not terribly so. As I say, it's very routine. But it does mean a heightened need for surveillance on the part of the crew to make sure they know exactly where they are.
All right, from John Nance, we now go on to ABC's John McWethy, standing by at the Pentagon. John, I was wondering, what difference did it make that the plane crashed near a cluster of U.S. naval installations?
A tremendous difference. Of course, the military is very organized and structured. This is the kind of thing that they actually practice. They know how to go out and do search and rescue. There were helicopters in the air in just a matter of minutes after this airplane went down. And of course, then they could move in with hundreds of volunteers now on the scene, moving injured people to hospitals, which are also designed and trained to deal with mass casualties if they should happen. There are, of course, Seabee engineers, Navy engineers on the scene right now, trying to cut into the fuselage of the airplane, looking for any additional survivors.
All right, John, and of course, the final survivor count still coming in.
ABC News, straightforward.
It is so good. Look at this. It has everything right there.
Oh, the wellness section. I'm just like, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I love the deals in stew. Getting these easy recipes has been super sweet. I love it, and they love it. Can I get an amen? The new GoodMorningAmerica.com. It's with me all day.
Almost every home here has sustained damage.
The roof was like 3 houses down, and the roof's, I think it's right there.
I'm glad you're okay.
Oh, thank you.
You could hear the gunfire just around this wall. So this is one of those checks. Around the corner here are the children. What's your name? Back on the job.
Back in the job.
Help build my country back. How are you?
How you doing?
Good to see you.
ABC's World News Tonight with David Muir is America's most watched newscast.
And good evening. We begin tonight with that headline out of Afghanistan that stunned and saddened so many of us today when we heard it. What is now the single deadliest day for U.S. forces in that war. A military Chinook helicopter was shot down in the dark of night, killing 30 U.S. troops and 8 Afghans, everyone on board. ABC News was the first to report that among the dead, 22 Navy SEALs, later learning most of them were from Team 6, the elite of the elite. Fellow members of their team were the ones who killed Osama bin Laden. Tonight, our team from Washington to Afghanistan reporting in here, and we begin with ABC's Martha Raddatz.
It is a crushing loss. The most elite forces in the U.S. military, 22 SEALs, killed in the fiery crash of their Chinook helicopter, along with Air Force and Army personnel. 30 Americans in all, 8 Afghans and a dog trained specifically for special operations. It happened last night near a Taliban stronghold in Wardak province. U.S. forces were engaged in a firefight on the ground. The Chinook full of SEALs was on its way to help when it was shot down, probably by a rocket-propelled grenade. An eyewitness describes the same. We were outside our rooms on the veranda, the witness said, and we saw this helicopter flying very low, and it was hit by a rocket, and it was on fire. It started coming down, and it crashed just yards away from our house close to the river. Most of the 22 SEALs were part of SEAL Team 6, that heroic unit that carried out the highly successful raid on Osama bin Laden's compound in May. But none of those who actually took part in the raid are believed to have been on this helicopter. President Obama, in the midst of an economic crisis, received the terrible word last night. U.S. Special Operations teams carry out up to a dozen missions a day in Afghanistan, 3,000 to 4,000 last year alone. Since 9/11, there have been 32 SEALs killed, but 22 in one day is devastating. There are just 300 men in SEAL Team 6, so in this one incident, more than 7% of the highly trained, highly valuable SEAL Team 6 has perished.
It's a terrible loss, a terrible human tragedy, but it's also a significant strategic loss for the nation as well. It takes a generation to grow a special operations warrior.
A loss for the nation and a loss for a tiny and close community that one officer said has done more for this nation than we will ever know.
And I'm joined by Martha Raddatz in Washington. So much lost today, Martha. And we know that these SEALs operate in such secrecy, and understandably so. How does the Pentagon go about notifying the families and in doing so protecting the privacy even now?
Well, I'm sure they had notification teams out all night. I've been thinking a lot about that, David. 22 notification teams in just that small SEAL community, 8 more elsewhere in the nation. That's just so many. And what makes this even more tragic is that it follows on the heels of that bin Laden raid, where those SEAL families, the SEALs themselves, and the entire country felt such pride. But tonight, as you know, is feeling such pain.
Martha Raddatz in Washington. Martha, thank you. ABC's Mike Betcher has embedded with U.S. troops so many times in Afghanistan for us, and he is there on the ground tonight with reaction there. Mike?
David, I'm speaking to you from Forward Operating Base Joyce in the troubled Kunar province in northeast Afghanistan. Soldiers of the 25th Infantry Division's Task Force Cacti are based here, and they often go out on these night operations, so the news of this crash has hit them hard. Every time they go out, they know they have death tugging at their sleeve. The Taliban have become more adept at using rocket-propelled grenades to shoot at these Chinooks. My son Carlos and I have been out on several of these missions. They're very difficult. You're flying over mountains where there are concealed locations for the Taliban to shoot at you, and when you land, you're surrounded by the Taliban, and there's usually a big fight. But they keep on going, even though the troop withdrawal process has begun in this area as well. David?
Mike Betcher in Afghanistan. Mike, thanks. We're also tracking the dangerous heat and massive flight disruptions at this hour on both coasts. More than 400 flights canceled so far, thunderstorms triggering ground stops at Baltimore, D.C., and at the airports right here in New York. And in the West at this hour, flight disruptions as well because of low visibility from wildfire smoke. And tonight here, a frightening milestone now from California. The Mendocino Complex fire in the northern part of that state is now the largest wildfire in state history, nearly the size of Los Angeles. ABC's Will Carr tonight from California.
Tonight in the West, wicked wildfires burning their way into the record books. The Mendocino Complex fire in Northern California, now the largest in state history, scorching an area nearly the size of Los Angeles. And in Southern California, the holy fire going from a spark to 4,000 out-of-control acres in a split second.
That fuel hasn't burned for almost 40 years.
This time-lapse capturing plumes of smoke and ash billowing into the sky, the flames forcing mandatory evacuations.
Fire crews doing everything they can to put out those flames. You can hear a chopper in the distance, and homes like this just didn't stand a chance. You have a burned stove here, and that gas line is still burning.
2 firefighters treated for heat exhaustion, 2 people trapped by flames, rescued by helicopter.
Fire travels faster than you think. It's an incredible sensation to be in this and to be faced with life and death.
Across the state, nearly 14,000 firefighters on the front line, some from as far away as New Zealand, yet resources still stretched thin.
There's so many fires burning in the state that it's hard to get resources here.
A 747 supertanker joining the fight, dumping nearly 20,000 gallons of retardant drop after drop. But in Northern California, new aerial photos show the devastation from the Carr fire. Containment is up, but the damage is done. 7 people killed, and that massive fire tornado made sure more than 1,000 homes reduced to ash.
The pictures are really still just stunning. Will Carr live tonight from California. And will that Mendocino complex fire now, of course, in the record books tonight, the largest in state history. Now they're postponing the start of school in some places.
That's right, David. One district pushing its start date back because of all the smoke in the area. And here in Orange County, authorities still worried about the holy fire burning behind me. It is brutally hot out. And the last time a lot of that brush burned was more than 4 decades ago. David.
The smoke there off in the distance. Will Carr, our thanks to you.
Off the South Carolina coast today, raising a relic of the Civil War. We told you about the Hunley last week, the Confederacy's hand-cranked submarine with 9 men crammed inside that sank a Union warship but then never made it home. Well, this morning, the tiny vessel was finally lifted from the sea. The South's secret weapon still a wonder. Here's ABC's Ned Potter.
The Hunley was not just lost in battle, it was lost to history for 130 years. To keep its design from Union hands, the Confederate Secret Service destroyed almost all record of it. But today, cradled in a giant sling, it was finally raised from the Atlantic for all the world to see.
It's like it's been saved for us so that we can just sort of awe at the technological wizardry that these inventors actually put into this machine.
It was brought back to Charleston Harbor to be studied and restored, archaeologists saying it may be in remarkable shape. The silt that buried the sub after it sank probably sealed it away from oxygen and bacteria that would otherwise have dissolved it.
We know the conditions are really great for excellent preservation of organic remains inside the Hunley. Such remains might be leather shoes, leather belts, clothing, textile. You might even have paper preserved.
Scientists say the bodies of the boat's 9 crew could be among the remains. They will eventually be buried with military honors, and perhaps now a few remaining wounds of the Civil War will be healed. Ned Potter, ABC News, New York.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Wednesday night. And we do begin with breaking news. That headline, North Korea just a short time ago issuing its newest threat. The AP now reporting that the North Korean regime is calling President Trump's words a load of nonsense, saying they will complete their plan to, quote, attack waters near Guam by mid-August. It comes after President Trump warned North Korea against making any more threats, or the U.S. would unleash fire and fury unlike anything the world has ever seen. ABC senior White House correspondent Cecilia Vega leading us off.
Tonight, a new threat from North Korea coming in, saying they will be ready to attack the U.S. territory of Guam by mid-August. This comes as President Trump's warning shot fired directly at Pyongyang tonight is sending shockwaves around the world. But ABC News has learned that threat caught some in the president's own inner circle by surprise. The president in that statement using language not vetted or pre-approved by his national security team.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
Sources close to the president say behind closed doors with top aides, including new Chief of Staff General John Kelly, President Trump had discussed taking a tougher tone on Pyongyang. But even members of his own national security team had no idea the president would go so far.
He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly, power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Thank you.
Within a few hours, North Korea responding with its own warning, saying it is seriously considering a plan to target Guam with missiles. The U.S. territory, home to crucial military bases and 160,000 Americans, is just 2,000 miles away. Then today, Rex Tillerson sending a message of his own, landing in Guam, offering very different words.
I think Americans should sleep well at night.
The Secretary of State striking a much softer tone.
What the president was doing is sending a strong message to North Korea in language that Kim Jong-un would understand, because he doesn't seem to understand diplomatic language.
Then the president himself weighed in, tweeting, "Our nuclear arsenal is now far stronger and more powerful than ever before. Hopefully, we will never have to use this power." But his initial words have sparked international reaction. From New Zealand,
I think the comments are not helpful in an environment that's very tense.
To Germany's Foreign Office, saying saber rattling won't help. Even some in the president's own party calling his words dangerous.
All it's going to do is bring us closer to some kind of serious confrontation. I think this is very, very, very serious. The great leaders that I've seen, they don't threaten unless they are ready to act. Yeah. And I'm not sure that President Trump is ready to act.
And Cecilia Vega is with us live tonight from Bedminster, New Jersey, where the president is vacationing at his golf course. And Cecilia, you have more on that statement from the North Koreans at this hour. And any response from the White House tonight?
David, no response from the White House because this statement literally just came in. I want to read a little bit to you. It is from a top Army commander given to us by state media, given out by state media. They say that they outright say that this is a crucial warning to the United States, calling that fire and fury comment by President Trump a load of nonsense. They say that this has infuriated the Army. They list the exact rockets that they plan to use to fire at Guam, David, and they say this plan will be complete by mid-August, David.
Cecilia Vega, who will be covering this into the night. Cecilia, thank you. ABC's Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz with us live in Washington tonight with more on this breaking development, this new threat from North Korea. And Martha, you've been talking to your sources at the Pentagon. A lot of Americans watching this unfold want to know, how likely is it we're going to see some sort of military conflict here?
Well, first of all, David, President Trump's statement was a surprise to many. It is important to say war is the last thing anyone at the Pentagon wants to see happen. But Pacific Command has been doing updated war planning, and they're certainly focusing on defensive measures as well. But if those tough sanctions imposed on North Korea do not work, if Kim Jong-un continues to make progress on a nuclear-tipped missile, a senior official told me that in 6 to 12 months, the administration will have to decide whether some sort of preemptive strike or some other measure should be undertaken to stop Kim. David?
All right, Martha Raddatz following the breaking developments as well.
ABC News, straightforward.
It is so good. Look at this. It has everything right there.
Oh, the wellness section. I'm just like, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I love the deals in Stew. Getting these easy recipes has been super sweet.